Good evening and welcome to Q&A. I'm Tony Jones and here to answer your questions tonight, the founder of newDemocracy, Luca Belgiorno-Nettis, who believes parliamentary democracy needs a radical overhaul. Newly elected Liberal Senator James Paterson, author, rev head and engineer Yassmin Abdel-Magied, Tasmanian Independent Senator Jacqui Lambie, and the Shadow Minister for Early Childhood and Vocational Education, Kate Ellis. Please welcome our panel. Thank you. Now, Q&A is live on ABC TV in New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. It's live everywhere else on News 24 at 9:35 Eastern Daylight Time. And you can watch and listen live on iView, on Facebook and ABC News Radio. We're also the first Australian program on Periscope, the live video stream. You can find that on Twitter. Now, our first question comes from Daniel Powell.
Over the past week, unprecedented heat waves has swept all throughout Australia. Why do we have a government that gives billions of dollars in subsidies to fossil fuel companies but refuses to take meaningful action on climate change?
Yassmin, I'll start with you there.
I think it's a really important question. And I will firstly say that I don't represent any employer that I may have been employed by in the past.
Well, you used to work for an oil company, so
yes.
I guess I'm wondering, does that mean you have a kind of sympathy for fossil fuels?
Well, look, I studied mechanical engineering, right? And throughout engineering, we were sort of taught, you know, you have to look at the most efficient or the most effective solution at a point in time. And I think when I entered the resource industry, I thought, you know what, I want to make change from within, and this is the thing this is the best way for me to do that. But the reality is, and I don't think anyone can deny, that climate change is happening, right? And it's, you know, even as someone who is a drilling engineer who literally drills the holes in the ground, I'm like, yo, this is happening and we have to do something about it. So from my point of view, all of the finger pointing about blackouts and so on, that is irrelevant. What we really should be thinking about is how do we have a bigger vision? Our electricity grid and the system is not set up for a bunch of different renewables to come in. Places like New York, after the Sandy hurricane, are doing some incredible changes, and the technology is there. 10 years ago, I maybe said, the technology wasn't necessarily there, but right now we have the technology, and countries like Costa Rica and Norway and Iceland are doing it. And the reality is that our generation, I'm 25, I have to live with the results of the things that we're thinking about and doing now. So I'm with you. I may be someone who's drilled the holes in the ground, but it's about time we do something.
So are you happy, very briefly, are you happy for oil drillers to be put out of business if that's what it takes?
Oof. So, very good question. I think it's a question about disruption, right? Every industry has its time, right? And the question is, can industries that have made money from oil be energy companies rather than just oil companies, and focus not just on the way they've done business in the past, but on the thing that they talk about caring, which is energy. And you know what? You can make money out of renewables if that's the one thing that energy companies care about, which it is. You know, we might talk about corporates caring about things other than money, but the reality is that money is the bottom line. So how do we look at setting up the system so that morality is just as valuable? I don't know. I don't have the answer.
We might come back to that. And Luca, can I get your view on this? Is climate change being endangered by the fossil fuel industry?
I might have a personal position on this, but actually my interest is more in the systemic, the process question. Daniel, how do we really as a community come to some sort of agreement how we might address whether we want to have a preference on renewables or a preference on fossil fuels? And so what we say, deliberative Democrats like myself, we say, why don't we try and get a representative group of the community? Let's take the partisan politics out of it. Let's have a deliberative space where we can actually consider all the issues from the various experts, the so-called domain professionals, and let's try and come to an understanding on that. Like vexed questions like we had in South Australia, we had a big citizens' jury on the nuclear fuel question. In Victoria, we had this question about infrastructure priorities, another jury there of 80-odd, 90 people.
Luca, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, Yassmin, I'll come back to you. But Luca, today in a joint statement, 18 groups, including the Business Council of Australia and all the way through to the Council of Social Services, called for an end to political finger-pointing and partisanship. How would you actually Just very briefly, how would you go about doing that? Can you literally take big decisions out of Parliament?
I think the problem with the Parliament now, it's a bit like cats in a sack. And, you know, we might think, let's put a more clever cat into the sack, thinking that might resolve things. And what we forget is actually the problem is the sack, you know. So how can we actually provide a more collaborative space? I mean, that's what we're trying to do with this Parliament, because now, whatever happens here, there seems to be this sort of cheap point scoring, one-upmanship. We've got to try and get away from this. I think most Australians, the public, is just frustrated and exasperated with this unproductive bickering. Can we not do something better?
Let's ask the politicians that, the cats in the sack, as it were. James Paterson, you're one of the new cats in the sack.
Yes.
What do you think?
It's a very cute analogy, so 4 points for that, Luca. Coming back to Daniel's question, though, I have to say, respectfully disagree with the premise of the question. I don't agree that there are billions of dollars of fossil fuel subsidies. Generally, when people talk about fossil fuel subsidies, they're referring to the diesel fuel rebate, which miners and farmers don't pay. And they don't pay it for a couple of reasons, which are very good reasons.
James, I don't want to go through all those reasons, but can we just make one point? I mean, the government is talking about perhaps spending billions of dollars on subsidising the building of new coal-fired power stations in Australia. That would effectively be a subsidy, would it not?
Well, it would be, but there is no subsidy in place for coal-fired power stations as we have today. There are actually...
You want to make one?
Well, there are... Well, not necessarily. It's something that's an option that's been floated. There's nothing concrete there yet. But what has happened and what has been happening for many years at the state and federal level is very generous subsidies for renewable energy. The government that I'm a part of has a renewable energy target of 23.5%. I think that's very ambitious as it is and certainly has some impacts on costs and reliability. But Bill Shorten is proposing a 50% renewable energy target by 2030, which has provided absolutely no evidence for how he will pay for it, how it will work. There's just no depth or thought that's gone into that at all. And we've seen from South Australia what the consequences of that is. The consequences are a lack of reliability and extraordinary cost to consumers and businesses.
OK, Yassmin wants to jump in. Make it brief because I want to hear from the other politicians.
What's happening in South Australia is not renewable energy's fault, right? There are lots of reasons for what happened in South Australia, but it is not renewable energy.
We will come to that in the next question, so hold that thought. And Kate Ellis.
Hi.
You've been verbaled already from one of the other cats. Now, can you actually solve these problems from inside? Can you solve these problems from inside Parliament, from inside the sack, as Luca suggests?
I'm going to just move away from the cats in the sack analogy for a moment, I think, and maybe go back to Daniel's question, which was, with all the evidence that the climate is changing, why don't we have a government who can take serious action to address climate change? And there's a really sad reality. The reason we don't have a government that can seriously address climate change is because the Prime Minister doesn't have the authority to put in place any meaningful action on climate change, despite the fact that we all know that that's what he believes. And that's the saddest thing, that how can we expect meaningful change, real policy, when we have a leader who won't stand up for the evidence and won't stand up for his long-held beliefs because he's so weakened within his own party. That's why we don't have real action on climate change. And, OK, I'll go back to the cats in the sack. That's why I would keep the sack, but I would change the cats.
Touché.
Luca's suggesting you might need to actually, in a way, allow the process to happen outside of Parliament because you never can get agreement. Once these things become so political, they become bound up in the parties. Yes, go ahead, Luca.
Can I just quote? This is one of the gurus of deliberative democracy. He's an Englishman, but he's come to Australia. He's been living here for over 20 years. His name is John Dryzek, and he says, where politicians from different sides talk past each other, this is what's happening today. In mostly ritual performance, party politicians, for the most part, do not reflect, do not change their minds for fear of being seen as weak and vacillating. So there's no capacity to compromise here. You have to take a position here. With all due respect, we have the most well-intentioned, capable people, politicians who, for the most part, have the public interests at heart. But what they're doing because of this electioneering imperative, they feel obliged to actually distinguish themselves from each other. So they frustrate collaboration from the outset. Let me see you agree then.
Well, we actually have seen the Parliament agree when it comes to
Why
climate
aren't we agreeing
change.
today?
Let's just
tonight?
remember that we actually saw both sides of the Parliament come together and form an agreement. And I just do not accept that the
It didn't
Parliament...
last very long, and there was never an agreement on how to tackle it. I mean, you came up with a carbon tax.
I think the
virtually
public...
use it to throw you out of government.
Malcolm Turnbull
Now we're
signed
in
up. There was a
stage
lot
two.
of work across the Parliament. But I'm just not going to sit here and say that our Parliament, it is beyond it to come up with real action to address this critically important issue. We come together on issues of national security. We come together across the Parliament on a whole range of issues. Today, we're marking the anniversary of the apology to the stolen generation. Like, there are issues which are bigger than any political party, and we need to be making sure that we elect people to Parliament who will put the country first, put the policy first, and settle on real agreements across the chamber, which we've done before.
I'm going to interrupt you all just so they can hear from someone who's not who's in Parliament, in the Senate, but not represented.
You're a cat too, Jacqui.
Not represented by one of the major parties.
Oh, woof. OK. First of all, we've always had climate change. It's been much, much hotter and much, much colder. And even 110,000 years ago, it was 4 degrees hotter. Charging our pensioners and our businesses and our families
There'll be
more
fact
for
checkers
power.
on that one, Jacqui.
Yeah,
so
they're always
let
on
them
me.
go at that one rather than have the argument.
OK, so charging our businesses and our pensioners, especially our aged pensioners, and our families more for power is not going to stop world climate change. And I can tell you now, had I have stuck with a deal that Clive Palmer was trying to make, we would have lost 10,000 jobs in Tasmania only about 2 years ago with the RET if we had not got rid of what was going on down there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this. I do not agree with the Paris climate change. And I'll tell you what, when everybody else wants to come on base, that's every country in the world, wherever they are, and they want to pay some sort of carbon tax, that's what it is, a carbon tax basically. Let's say it for what it is. OK, when they want to even the playing field, then you know what, maybe we can step on board. But until then, we're kidding ourselves. But I'll tell you what you can do. We know we're not going to stop world climate change. So let's have some vision here and prepare for it. Let's prepare for this. Why aren't we looking at involuntary national service and boosting up our SES, boosting up our frontline services? Why aren't we looking at that sort of stuff? And the other thing is, I just want to say one more thing. We have 30% of the world's uranium in this country. You tell me why we're not looking at nuclear power instead of what we've done with our utilities and our assets in this country and sold them to overseas big businesses where they don't pay their bloody fair share of tax and where they're usually donors to the bloody Liberal Party.
OK,
So
you
tell
get a
me.
very brief response because we've got another question to go to.
Okay. Jacqui, with all due respect, I 100% agree in the sense that we need to be thinking about the most vulnerable members of our society, pensioners, etc. We shouldn't be looking at situations where people are paying a hell of a lot more. But that is not the same as thinking about doing things better for the earth. And
how are you going to stop it? It's always been much colder, much colder.
It's about the fact that, like,
You're never going to stop it. It's happening. Get used to it. Prepare for it. Get ready.
We've got
Get
a
off the
practical
blocks.
question about the debates that are going on at the moment. They've already been partly alluded to. It's Aaron Fernandez.
South Australia continues to experience an imbalance of supply and demand in its energy grid. Considering that South Australia has one of the highest mixes of renewable energy in the world, does this mean renewable energy is proving to be a dismal option?
OK, Kate Ellis, you're from South Australia.
I am, very proudly. The answer is no. What we've seen in South Australia is, and what we've seen from the media today, is that we have seen this government come out and intentionally lie about what caused blackouts in South Australia last year. We've heard the government who came out on the very same day that they had the advice that it was absolutely nothing to do with renewable energy. It was because there was a storm that knocked over a huge number of towers, and it wouldn't have mattered what was generating that power. And once those towers went down, there was a blackout across the state. We saw a half-an-hour blackout a few days ago, which led to the Prime Minister getting up and playing politics with South Australia's energy in the Parliament once more. Yet the very next day...
Can I just interrupt you? Doesn't the second blackout, just a few days ago, you said, doesn't that indicate something's going wrong? Lessons haven't been learnt? Nothing was in place to actually prevent this from happening?
Sorry, Tony, I am not for a second trying to defend the way that our energy market operates at the moment nationally. I'm not trying to say that it's good enough to have blackouts. What I'm trying to say is that what we don't need in South Australia is we don't need people standing up in Canberra trying to play politics while our lights are still out, when the very next day the lights go out in New South Wales, under the same load shedding that happened in South Australia 24 hours earlier. And the Prime Minister said, that's all fine, there's nothing to see there. We don't need political game playing. What we do need to accept that in this country, we need to look at solutions for maintaining our energy supply and security, and we need to look at modernising the way the electricity market works, and we need to recognise that there have been serious failures. There are serious failures in regards to the effects of privatisation. When there is enough power, but somebody decides not to turn it on because they can make greater profits if they leave it switched off, that is a failure and it needs to be addressed, and it needs serious leadership rather than political game playing.
Okay,
I'm Australian, I'm sick
I've got to hear from James Paterson first, because he's been, well, his side of politics has been talked about here.
Thank you, Tony.
We'll come back to you in a minute.
In the last 4 months, there have been 4 major blackouts in South Australia. And the South Australian Labor government and their allies in federal Labor have had 4 different excuses each time as to what has caused it. And each time they assured us it was not renewable energy. But the Australian energy market operator has said, yes, the first blackout was caused by a storm, but it was exacerbated by South Australia's unusually high reliance on renewable energy. Now, wind power normally provides about 40% of the power in South Australia. On a good day, it can provide 80%. On a bad day, like it was last week, it can provide 2.5%. Now, if you have that enormous variability within your power system, you need a couple of things to make it work well. You need either storage of electricity, or you need backup electricity, which is thermal energy, like gas or coal. And if you don't have those things in place, then you'll have big problems. And even if you do have those things in place...
Just on that point, because I heard the Prime Minister say precisely that today. First of all, the storage capacity is not there at the moment. The technology is not there, so
correct.
You need to wait for that. But the second thing, the thermal energy was in place. They just didn't turn it on.
Well, that's an interesting point, Tony. And in the last 2 years, 2 coal-fired power stations in South Australia closed, and they closed because they have been pushed aside by renewable energy. And there are a few gas plants left in South Australia, but one of those was mothballed again a year ago because of the impact of renewable energy. Now, South Australia is extremely reliant on the interconnector to Victoria at Haywood. And why that's really important is that Victoria's power largely comes from coal-fired, brown coal-fired power. So if South Australia didn't have Victoria, we would see many more blackouts. The truth is that renewable energy, as it is today, cannot supply reliable baseload power, and that is not good for business. It is not good for households.
That is
because
incorrect.
Families can't turn on the air conditioning on a hot day. Businesses have to close and send their workers home.
Let's just hear, Yassmin is saying that's incorrect. Let's just hear her point.
There are multiple examples around the world of countries operating on renewables. So the fact that the argument that the technology isn't there has been proven wrong. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is simply because things have worked in the past, it doesn't mean we can't think, oh, we have new technology available, how can we use that to make things better? Just like, for example, when the car came and everyone was using horse and buggies, we didn't think, oh, well, our systems aren't set up for cars, we'll continue using horse and buggies because that's the way it's always been. No, we changed roads so that we could use cars, right? And
yes.
The problem that we have is that our grid is 40 years old plus. It is ageing, it is inefficient. There are multiple coal-fired power stations that have, if you've designed stuff, right, you would know you design things for a certain number of years, and we're using them past their design limit at the moment. So rather than thinking, let's keep the coal-fired stations on past their use-by date, how about what new technology is available,
sure.
and how do we use that?
I don't disagree with anything that you said, Yassmin, but that transition takes time. And in the meantime...
it also takes government to back it. And it also takes people to believe in it, right? And we're not seeing that.
OK, James, you get to respond to that briefly because we need to move on.
Thank you. There was a report last week which showed that the effect of the renewable energy target alone at the federal level amounted to $3 billion of subsidies every year for renewable energy. Now, if that is not the government backing renewable energy, I don't know what is. At the end of the day, we're going to make this transition, but it takes time. And in the meantime, we do need to have these backups in place. And shutting down coal-fired power in the meantime is going to have very real consequences for families and for businesses.
Yes, that's because there's no base load power. So if the wind isn't blowing, the sun isn't shining, guess what? Your renewable energy has just gone out the window.
In
just a moment.
Okay, no, sorry.
Yeah, it does.
Jacqui, I'm going to catch you off because we've got. We could spend all night talking about this. I'm not going to do that.
Take it on.
Remember, if you hear any doubtful claims on Q&A, send a tweet using the hashtags FactCheck and Quanda. Keep an eye on our Twitter account and the Conversation website for fact checks by the experts. Now, the next question comes from Sasha Personeni.
Hi. So the proposed cuts to New Start, Youth Allowance, Centrelink, the Energy Supplement and the pension have been justified by the Turnbull government as a necessary sacrifice to allow lower-income Australians the chance to access childcare. However, many lower-income families rely heavily on these services in their everyday lives. My question to the parliamentarians is this. What will you and your parties do to support the people who are the most dependent and who will now be worse off than before? How can we support families off the backs of Australia's most disadvantaged?
Jacqui Lambie, I will start with you.
Yep, I'll tell you what they can go and do with their Omnibus. They can stick it where it fits and with a cat with it. All right? This is very cheeky about rolling all this into one because they're never going to get it through. And I can tell you now...
So we're talking now about the Treasurer's giant bill that contains all those cuts.
Yep. But all those cuts have been taken from one hand, giving to another in that omnibus.
But we'll also, I mean, and in a way, the kind of carrot in this omnibus bill is extra money for childcare.
Yeah, no, there's no carrot because you're taking the head of the carrot here and you're giving it over to here. That's bullshit, and that's why it's never going to work. You can't do that. You're just moving it from one hand to the other. I tell you what, how about you get the Liberal Party and the LNP to go after their big political donors out there to pay their taxes and all the rest instead of coming after the most vulnerable in society, because by making you people poorer is not going to help the situation. All they're doing is making the divide greater between the richer and the poorer, and that's what they're doing. And by the way, the welfare card's on its way too, so they're about to bitch slap like you've got no idea. I can assure you right now. So get ready because it's coming.
Jacqui, you're obviously talking to the other crossbenchers. Do you think the Omnibus bill has any chance of getting through at all?
Well, apparently One Nation will be voting for it, so, you know, which bothers me because they're supposed to be for those that are less fortunate. Well, they're not, that's actually starting to unravel for them very, very quickly. They're not there for the underdog, I can tell you now. And it's going to come down to NXT, and I'm just hoping that how I've spoken to Nick and explained it, I've come through that system. I was on welfare, I was on a disability support pension for 10 years trying to support 2 kids. I've been at work where I've had to pay those bloody childcare expenses where they've cost me three quarters of my wage as a young private in the army. So one of our wages was actually nearly all going on childcare. So there's no easy answer, but you could certainly lower the childcare costs, but we can do this a much better way if those big companies start paying their damn tax. And that's what needs to be done.
Okay.
And that goes for Google and Facebook and whatever else is out there. Start taxing. Don't tell me it's too difficult. It seems to be it's very easy to come take money off you people that are already living on or below the poverty line, but it's too bloody hard to go after their big donors.
All right, let's hear from James Paterson in the Senate. You're going to have at least part of the job of trying to negotiate this through the crossbench. Doesn't sound like you're going to have an easy passage.
Well, let's wait and see, Tony. One thing that hasn't been mentioned so far in this discussion is the fact that we're nearing $500 billion of gross debt. And that means that while we've got really good initiatives like this childcare package, which I think is really worthwhile supporting, but it actually costs quite a lot of money and we have to find things to fund that package. Now, this childcare package is going to address the concerns that Jacqui raised. A low-income household will have 85% of their childcare costs met by the federal government, and it will scale down from there so that a high-income family will only have 20% of their costs met by the federal government. It's a much better targeting of the money that we do have to spend on childcare, but it does have to be funded, and I think the changes that we've proposed, particularly to the family tax benefits, are entirely justified.
All right, let's hear from Kate Ellis.
Well, that's actually just a load of rubbish. Like, the government is proposing that they cut billions and billions of dollars more from, as you quite correctly said, from our pensioners, from our unemployed, from the 70,000 new mothers who will be worse off as a result of their paid parental leave, and through the families who will have, the million families who will have their family tax benefit cut if they get their way. They are cutting billions and billions of dollars off them, and then trying to reinvest a small proportion of that into childcare. This is a scam, and it's been a scam from day one, and there is absolutely no need to link them all. And if that isn't bad enough, they came out today and now are holding children and members of our society with a disability hostage to these negotiations. So,
I think towards the end of the day, they seem to back away from that. You're talking about the NDIS and the suggestion that NDIS funding might not be available if this or these savings weren't available, correct?
Well, I'm talking about the government's press conference, very long press conference.
They do seem to have backed away from that as any kind of threat.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that, once again, the government can't keep a position for 24 hours. I'm pleased about that in this instance. The other thing I would just say, though, in regards to James's contribution is we should know that in the childcare package as it stands at the moment, the government is proposing to spend over $1 billion in additional money, yet almost 1 in 4 families will be worse off as a result of that. And some of those families who will be worse off are the families of some of the most vulnerable children in Australia. I think it is immoral to talk about spending over $1 billion in extra money and cutting the access of some of the most vulnerable Australian children to early childhood education. They need to fix their childcare package before they try and blackmail us.
We've actually got a question specifically on the childcare package from Lynn Connolly. Let's go to that and then we can hear from the other panellists. Go ahead, Lynn.
The Prime Minister's latest attempt to reform childcare is intended to increase affordability while being paid for by new tax revenues from more parents returning to work, savings already identified by the MYEFO, and crackdowns on rorts. So why has it taken 9 years so far to try and pass any proper childcare legislation? And why is this legislation robbing some children of an early childhood education based on their parents' work choice?
I should just make the point that Lynn is the president of Australian Childcare Alliance New South Wales. James, obviously that's a question for you.
Well,
Tony,
9 years and you still can't get it right. I mean, fair go.
Well, we haven't been in government for 9 years, Jacqui, as I think you know. The system as it is broken. When Labor tried to fix this in government, they ended up spending a lot more money and not making childcare any more affordable at all. What we're doing is following the Productivity Commission's recommendations of what we should do to fix this problem. And it's about better targeting the money to the people who need it most, and it's about boosting people's productivity and participation in the workforce. One of the best things I think about retargeting family tax benefits into childcare benefits is that it encourages people who want to go to work to be able to go back to work. One of the biggest barriers is the affordability of childcare. Instead of paying the money just for a general household budget, we're effectively repurposing that and giving it to them to help pay for.
Can I just quickly go back to Lynn on this? And you said at the end of your question, the legislation's robbing some children of an early childhood education based on their parents' work choice. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, children don't choose what parents or what families they go to. And children can't help it if their parents can't or choose not to work.
But what part of the legislation are you talking about? Because James said that people on lower incomes will be better off.
Yes, but only a certain number of those people who are working.
They get 12 hours.
Right.
So at the moment, the children get 24 hours of early childhood education a week, whereas it's going to be
children
cut to
whose
12.
parents are not working, is that right?
That's right, because we have to remember that our children are our future and we need to give them an education, an early childhood education where the best benefits for education come from.
So what happens to children whose parents are not working in the new legislation?
Well, some of them will get 12 hours, and I think some of them don't get any at all.
No, that's not right. Sorry, I have to clarify that, Tony. The minimum available to people who do not work at all is 24 hours a fortnight, and then there is an activity test to access any eligibility beyond that, but it's a very light activity test. It only requires 4 hours work a week to qualify, and that can include volunteering. This is a participation measure. It is unapologetically about participation. And
I'm with Jacqui.
Mate,
I'm with Jacqui.
You know how many families out there that have been living in public housing where you're in the 3rd and 4th generation? It just doesn't work like that. Why should those kids be paying the penalty being stuck inside those houses? Get them out of there.
They won't be.
Yeah, bullshit.
Okay,
I'm really angry about this. Get those kids out of there.
Hey, Ellis. We'll come back to him.
Well, I think the thing that we have to be mindful of is that they are having their access cut. They're having it cut in half. And that some of these children, they might not be in the child protection system, but some of them haven't yet been detected. Some of them are in incredibly dysfunctional households where some people might argue, oh, well, we need to get their parents out there working. Well, how about when we talk about an early childhood system and we talk about a childcare system, we also talk about what's best for children. And what's best for children is you cannot take away the one safe environment that some of these children have. You cannot take away the one environment where they get fed healthy food, that they get looked after, that they might feel some affection. These are incredibly vulnerable children. And I'm not saying this to be obstructionist about the government's childcare changes. I will say on the record right here that I think we need change in our childcare system, that we would absolutely support the government's measures to simplify the system, to roll into a single payment, to put a benchmark price. We will not stand in the way of that. But why? Why are we investing more money and making vulnerable children worse?
Okay, I just want to go now, James. You do need to respond to that because there does seem to be a bit of unanimity on this side of the panel and from our questioner that vulnerable children are going to be reliant on what their parents do rather than what they currently are entitled to.
Well, there's $1 billion safety net in this package, which ensures that a minimum amount of childcare is available to people in that situation. But the government is absolutely unapologetic about requiring participation for above and beyond that. Because
we should leave those kids in that household.
That's live in a home where their parents do work or are involved in the community or are volunteering. That is a good thing. That is good for young children.
That is
and we
a really
are not apologetic about that.
Yeah, right? That's
no, it's not privilege. It's what the data says. It's what the evidence says. It's not privilege at all.
You know what?
I'm sorry.
This is the problem with not having enough diversity in government, right? Because there are a whole bunch of people that don't face these problems being like, you know what's good for people? What we think is good
it's
for
what the data shows is good for people, Yassmin. It's what the evidence shows.
It's not true.
Quickly, I'd love to hear Luca's been very quietly listening to this, and I suppose what you're seeing here is a demonstration of how these arguments get played out in Parliament. How would you do it better? Very briefly.
Well, I think the most underused asset in politics today is the common sense of everyday people, not when they vote, but when they deliberate together, not when they are debating, but when they are deliberating, when they have no incentive to win the debate. What they are there for is to actually resolve the issue. So can we not conceive, I mean, that's what this citizen jury model is about. It's been inspired by the ancient Greeks. I know there's a lot of people out there might think, oh, the Greeks, you know, they're the people that excluded women and slaves. And I say, well, yeah, well, that's what the Americans and the British did 2,000 years later. And even worse, they didn't include poor people. The Greeks had poor people. They had their parliament constituted by random selection, not by elections. Now, that is like sort of, oh, that's really radical. But the experience that we have around the world now in the last 10 years or so with these citizen juries, not just here in Australia, in Ireland they just had one recently where they had a constitutional convention made up of 99 people, 66 of whom were randomly recruited. People are recognising, governments are recognising, that a way to resolve some of these wicked problems is to take the politics out of it and bring the public into the middle of the room, let them hear from the so-called domain experts, the sector professionals, and let them deliberate and come to some reasonable conclusions. And they happen, invariably that happens.
Sounds like Q&A, except we never come to reasonable conclusions. Let's move on. Our next question is a video. It's from Luke Wright in Pakenham, Victoria.
Senator Paterson, with the WA Liberals giving their preferences to One Nation in the upcoming state election, is this a concession that they can't win on their own platform?
OK, James, back to you. And obviously we want to hear from everyone on this, so keep your answers brief.
Yeah, I don't think any party giving preferences to any other party is a concession of anything, unless you also think that Labor preferencing them Greens is a concession that they can't win on their platform. On the merits of WA particularly, it's a special place for many reasons. It's a different place in part because the Liberals and Nationals have a very different relationship in WA than they do nationally. Are you
saying it's a special place?
I am saying it's a special place, Tony.
Is Queensland special in the same way?
I'm a very strong coalitionist, and I'm very fond of my national colleagues in the Senate. I prefer there were more Liberals than Nationals, but, you know, if they're definitely the second best after that. And we would never see a deal replicated like this in the rest of the country. WA is different. And one example of that is that the West Australian Nationals are taking to this election a Wayne Swan-style mining tax that I know the federal Nationals would be absolutely appalled by. So it is a different situation. I don't think you'll see it replicated, at least in
OK, but can I just put to you what one of your colleagues, Trade Minister Steve Ciobo, said this morning? He said that One Nation's now demonstrated economic rationalism and a mature approach to economic policy. So I guess just a quick one for you. Which one of One Nation's economic policies could a Liberal government get on board with?
Well, there's certainly things we disagree with them in the economic sphere, particularly on trade, but one of the things that they've been responsible about and since they joined the Senate is on debt. They've voted for a number of measures to help rein in the debt. And I'm very concerned as a young person about the intergenerational implications of that debt, and so I give them full credit for taking it.
But if you get too close to them and you believe the economic rationalists, what about the 2% flat tax? What about their opposition to free trade policies or their plan to get rid of all penalty rates? I mean, are these things you might end up negotiating with them?
No, as I said...
as they become more powerful in the Senate?
No, as I said, Tony, we disagree with them on many core economic issues. Free trade's a very good example of that. We haven't backed away from that one bit, and I don't expect we ever will. OK,
Kate Ellis.
What a total bunch of sellouts that we have seen. I mean, we've seen Liberal leaders stand up and say, we won't deal with One Nation for many, many years. And isn't it unfortunate that it is Malcolm Turnbull, who so many people had so much hope for, who has shown that he can't do what people like John Howard did before him? Now, let's be really clear that they can come up with whatever justification they like. It is all rubbish. We saw Arthur Sinodina say on the weekend that it's because One Nation is so much more sophisticated now than they were 20 years ago.
Which I'm deeply concerned about that.
Can we just have a look at the evidence of that? The evidence is that One Nation today has members saying that the Port Arthur massacre was faked, that 9/11 was a hoax. We saw just a couple of weeks ago, not wanting to fire Jacqui up too much again, but we saw just a couple of weeks ago one of them coming out saying that single mothers had made a lifestyle choice to be single mothers and they were leading to more ugly and lazy children. So this is One Nation today.
Can you explain then, Kate, why it is that Pauline Hanson's today accused Labor in Queensland of trying to do a grubby deal with them where One Nation would run dead in Labor seats and Labor would run dead in One Nation seats in Queensland?
I can
because it does sound, if that's true, that means Labor's playing exactly the same games you're accusing.
I think the key words there, Tony, is the if that's true. And in fact, Labor in Queensland has come out and categorically said that that's not true.
There was a private conversation now been revealed in the Senate. They would hardly come out and say
Pauline Hanson also came out today and said the Minerals Council were doing Labor's preference negotiations on their behalf. These are the same people that gave Scott Morrison big chunks of coal to take into question time this week. Does that sound like something that would, the Minerals Council don't do our negotiations. Pauline Hanson has a lot of rubbish come out of her mouth, and I suggest that is just more.
Jacqui Lambie.
Well, I don't really care about their dirty, filthy deals, I'll be honest. And you know what? It's funny what the Liberal Party in the federal seat up there in federal parliament will do to keep One Nation on side. Honestly, you'd be... it just blows me away. But I'll tell you what, so what they've done in Western Australia is they've taken the Nationals, so they've taken the puppy dog that they used to have, has gone back to the pound, and they actually think they're getting something better. But I'll tell you what, when that bites them, come back and see me.
There's some hectic analogies happening today.
Puppy dogs, cats in
Can I just ask you this? I mean, you and Pauline Hanson do have certain things in common, certain views in common. Would you ever consider joining One Nation rather than have the steamroller just run you over at some point?
Who's going to run me over?
Well, I mean, if that were a possibility. Just a question. If you could just answer that particular question, would you ever consider joining One Nation to be part of a bigger, more powerful entity with similar views?
I was a part of a bigger power entity once before. That didn't work too well for me and others. That'd be the first thing. And, you know, you've got to be able to sustain that power and that resilience and that resistance. And quite frankly, I don't think One Nation has it.
You know, the problem, right, is that we're talking about One Nation as if there's some sort of party that has platforms that aren't deeply xenophobic, that aren't deeply divisive, that aren't trying to kick people like me out of this country simply for being Muslim, right? We're talking about One Nation and the fact that Liberals in WA want to preference One Nation, which clearly says to me, we actually don't care about any of the values we talk about caring, right? All we want to do is stay in power, right? We love power so much that we are willing to send our preferences to a party that, like, have you gone to the website and looked at their economic policy? It is unbelievable. There is nothing there. There is literally nothing there that makes economic sense, right? And so the fact that we're discussing, like, I'm sorry.
I think everybody's picking up on that now. I think people are onto them.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do is just move on to the next question.
Sorry.
Of course,
it blows my mind. Like, One Nation wants to ban Muslims. They're talking about halal.
You'll be able to talk about that subject. Now, you're watching Q&A live across Australia. If you'd like to have your say, as many on the panel are trying to do, join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter, or join the discussion at Q&A Extra on Facebook Live and ABC News Radio straight after this program. Our next question comes from Subhash Bagera.
With the demise of dictatorship in the world, there has been a mass migration.
Sorry, we just missed the beginning of your question there, Subhash. Would you mind just starting again? Thank you.
With demise of dictatorship in the world, there has been a mass migration of people between continents. People bring with them different cultures, experience, expectations. This mixture of people, some of them oppressed for a long time, has put the meaning of democracy in question. Question about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, women's liberation, equality of all genders, which are separate from religion, are misunderstood. Is it not the time for democratic leaders of the world to identify and define the rules so that migration doesn't disturb the peace and harmony of the community?
OK, I'm going to start with Jacqui Lambie because she has suggested new rules around migration.
Well, I have, and I'm happy to talk about the full face covering that we've done.
We'll come to that. But, I mean, let's stick with migration first. That's a question about migration. And I mean, earlier this month or last month, you reportedly said Australia should follow Donald Trump's path.
Well, I've actually said it in the past, and what I've said is I would rather look after our own backyard first, which we're not. We're actually taking from the poor. So that's, you know, somehow when we've got 1/3 of our pensioners, our wage pensioners living on or below the poverty line, something needs to be done. And if that means we need to put a hold or a ban on that for 2 years to fill in that gap to make sure that those people in our own backyard get what is needed, so be it. I've got isatics out there everywhere. I've got kids at 11 and 12. I can't get them into rehab centres because the government doesn't want to spend the money on them. You know, we need to look after our own backyard first.
Jacqui, can I just interrupt? Did you say to the advocate in Tasmania that we should follow Donald Trump's example by deporting all Muslims who support Sharia law?
Yep, that's correct. Anybody that supports Sharia law in this country should be deported.
So do you know what Sharia law is?
Yes, but it does not have
do you know
rights.
What it is? Me praying 5
Sharia law.
Of course, me praying 5 times a day is Sharia.
Okay.
Right? Like basic.
What about the equal rights for women? What about
that is completely separate from Islam.
So now you can be a Sharia law supporter and be half pregnant at the same time.
What are you talking about? You are talking about stuff you don't know anything about. Like, okay, I'm not going to attack you personally. But my frustration is that people talk about Islam without knowing anything about it. And they're willing to completely negate any of my rights as a human being, as a woman, as a person with agency, simply because they have an idea about what my faith is about. Excuse me, Islam to me is the most feminist religion, right? We got equal rights well before the Europeans. We don't take our husbands' last names because we ain't their property. Right? We were given the right to own land. We the fact is, what is culture is separate from what is faith. And the fact that people go around dissing my faith without knowing anything about it and want to chuck me out of a country I have done, and Muslims, The fact is, Jacqui, I agree.
The fact is, we have one law in this country, and it is the Australian law. It's not Sharia law.
In Islam,
not in this country.
Do you know what
not in my day.
In Sharia, it says you follow the law of the land on which you are on. It says in Islam that you follow the law of the land on which you are on.
You tell me
Jacqui,
that.
Jacqui,
that is not my religion.
Can I just say that shouting at each other is not going to help?
That is true.
So please stop. I just want to ask you, let me go to, I'm saying that to both of you if you wouldn't mind. Now, let's just go to Donald Trump was mentioned, and obviously he's redefining the rules around immigration in the United States, at least temporarily at this stage. You got caught up in that. Are you still caught up in it as a dual Sudanese-Australian citizen?
So I was born in Sudan. I moved to Brisbane when I was a year and a half. And apparently because I was born in Sudan, I might be a terrorist. I was caught up in that because of the fact that I was born in Sudan. Despite the fact that I grew up in this country, I know no other real culture than Australian, really, because Australian is who I am. And I think the fact is that Donald Trump is changing a whole bunch of things. And the fact that we're normalising the kind of discussions and the kind of rhetoric that Donald Trump uses frightens me, right? It deeply makes me scared because, Jacqui, you talk about, and I apologise for yelling because that is unbecoming of a lady. You talk about protecting Australians. Well, I am Australian. I have gone around the world talking about how much I love Australia. Just wait, right? And so it hurts me deeply, right, when my elected representatives don't want to have me in this country simply because of my faith or because of where I was born. And I think this kind of rhetoric is what we saw pre-World War II. We saw it in the 30s, the same kind of othering. They are different, they're not like us, they do stuff that we don't accept. I back you 100%. We should look after people that are vulnerable in this country. I will back you to the hilt on that. But that is not mutually exclusive to being generous to those that are coming in.
OK, now, Jacqui, let's hear from you.
Okay.
And let me just put this to you. Do you accept that some of the things you say can come across as being quite hateful to others?
To a minority. Well, if that's a minority, but this is for the majority. This is what
but, I mean,
one of the
Oh, girl!
Want to feel safe, be safe. And Donald Trump, if he wants to put that and put those on hold for 3 months, he has every right to do so until he can work out exactly what is going on. If that's going to keep America safer, just like it's going to keep Australia. So, you know what? Stop playing the victim. Stop playing the victim. We've had enough. Stop playing the victim.
OK, may I ask you this? May I ask you this?
Your ban got lifted, get over it.
Oh, sure.
All right, enough.
I am so fine right now. OK.
Right, well, there you go.
So the thing is, Jacqui, is that...
It hasn't hurt you at all.
The thing is, Jacqui, is that national security experts around the world have said that these sort of bans are the things that make countries less safe. It's not me saying it, it's actual experts, right?
They're the same national security people that would drive the people out of the Middle East instead of staying there, making sure they've got safe havens.
Guys, I want to just hear from our other panellists. And again...
I hope I didn't incite this sort of cat in the sack number.
No, I don't think so, but...
No.
Luca, you've been a bit of a voice of reason. What do you say?
Tony, you know, this might be great theatre, and I know that Q&A is as much about the contest of ideas as it is about anything else. But I have a view about democracy, and I don't think I'm alone here. I think democracy is principally about social cohesion. Yes, the contest of ideas is important, but principally we are here to try and find how we can live together better. How do we do democracy better? I think the way we do it today is fraught because we are effectively promoting our differences because we are trying to elect people that are different from each other. They're campaigning to sort of win the vote. That is not the way democracy was originally conceived. Democracy was conceived as an inclusive, collaborative affair. So that is the genius, the original genius of democracy. Random recruitment. And I know most people think, oh, the jury, what do those people know? But with these projects that are being done around the world, in the last 10 years or so in particular, hundreds of citizen juries, here in Australia, dozens, they prove They certainly demonstrate there's a real capacity for everyday people to address complex issues and come up with sensible recommendations to government.
Okay. Now we've got a question I'm going to go to. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to bring everyone back in a minute, and this question will allow you to do it. It's from Jennifer Hartley.
Thank you, Tony. As the behaviour of flamboyant politicians, both here and overseas, is consuming much of the media airtime, it's easy to forget, and the ruling Conservative Party is drifting further and further to the right, that it's easy to forget that at the last election, the majority of Australians did not vote for a hard-right conservative social and political agenda. The Liberal Party has traditionally been a broad church where there's been a wide range of views from deeply conservative to progressive. But this shift further and further to the right, isn't this a betrayal of the majority of Australians who did not vote for a hard right?
Okay, I'm going to start with James Paterson on this, and you can reflect on the other conversation.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's true that Liberal Party's drifted to the right. I think we remain a broad church. Yeah, I know that might not be a popular view, but it's the truth. You should come and attend a Liberal Party room meeting sometime. The breadth of views and issues that are raised and the different perspectives that are raised are pretty remarkable. And I think that's a really healthy thing. I think it's one of the great strengths of the Liberal Party. And I really appreciate, as a Liberal backbencher, the freedom that we are given to speak out on issues that are important to us, to speak out to our conscience, and even to cross the floor if we feel sufficiently strongly. That's not something that most of our political opponents have. Most other parties have a much tighter party discipline. And so they may show to the public a narrower frame of view, but that doesn't mean they don't have that diversity in their party. It just means they shut it down.
James, is Malcolm Turnbull in any danger at all of losing the middle ground? Because obviously he had the potential to take the middle ground from the Labor Party, the middle ground of the Liberal Party, and possibly even a number of Greens, and occupy the centre of politics. Are you at all concerned that he appears to have moved back, perhaps reflexively, to become more a creature of the party?
No, Tony. In fact, I think the opposite's the case. If the Liberal Party is losing any support, it is on our right flank, not in the centre. All the activity in politics at the moment with Corey Bernardi and One Nation is on many issues to our right of centre. So I think the Liberal Party is and remains a party of the centre-right, which we always have been. We span, classically Liberal to Conservative viewpoints, and I think that's a great, diverse option to provide the Australian people.
Kate Ellis.
Can I just say, first of all, I wanted to respond to something that Yassmin said, and I didn't have a chance, in that you said that it was really hurtful to have elected representatives that don't want you in this country. Can I just say, as an elected representative, that I am so glad that you are in this country, and I think this country would be an even better place if we had more passionate, intelligent, hard-working people like you. So I just want to place that on the record.
But not with the Sharia law. Not with the Sharia law.
And I wasn't trying to fire you back up again, Jacqui.
But it's just, you know what, I welcome them too, but not with Sharia law, and I've made that quite clear.
You have made your point quite clear. And the other thing, of course, the Liberal Party, we're going round and round in circles a little bit, but it's true that Malcolm Turnbull has moved to the right, has been pushed to the right because he doesn't have the power within his own party to stand up for what he believes in and for what moderate Australians believe in. We've seen it time and time again that he's sold out on his own beliefs, and that someone on the far right sticks up their hand, makes some demand, and Malcolm jumps straight away. He has made concessions that Tony Abbott wouldn't make. He's made concessions that John Howard would never make. Malcolm Turnbull has turned out to be totally hollow, to not stand for anything, and it means that people didn't get what they thought that they were voting for.
Okay, I've got another. No, you can come back in. Another question on this subject, though. It's from Damien Ferry.
Damien Ferry from the UCP Young Conservatives. Now, this is directed to the panel, but specifically for Senator Paterson. Now, isn't it the case that with Corey Bernardi leaving the party, that basically the Liberals coming out crying disloyalty for him for doing that is a bit of a contradiction, considering all the Liberals that were able to tear down Tony Abbott as Prime Minister and remove him? And also, doesn't it justify him for leaving the party when the party has lost its conservative values and also went further to the left, despite what other people may think, but also this has caused other voters to turn to other parties such as the United Conservative Party and also One Nation.
James Paterson. So another completely different perspective.
I understand why some supporters of the Liberal Party feel very sad about what happened with the leadership change. It was a kind of a traumatic event for the Liberal Party, and I understand why some people are still upset about that. But if Cory Bernardi was one of those people, and if that was the reason why he was upset, he had a very good opportunity to leave the Liberal Party, and that was at the last election. He didn't leave the Liberal Party at the last election, which would have been the appropriate time to do it after the leadership change. He went to the election as a Liberal and stood again as a Liberal, and now 7 months later has left the party. I am disappointed that he's done that. I'm someone who counts Cory as a friend, but I'm disappointed that he did that, and I think the right thing for him to do was to stay in the Liberal Party and fight for the things that he cares about in the way that no other political party would allow him to do. We are the party that allows the most intellectual freedom for its backbenchers, and he could have continued to do that inside the Liberal Party.
So, James, it's interesting how much this debate about the Liberal Party is being framed by the party being torn in two directions. We just got that from two separate questions and, indeed, different perspectives on this panel. So the Australian's Paul Kelly's been writing about this in recent days, and he says the conservative side of Australian politics is now devouring itself, consumed by personal aggrandisement, ideological delusion and populist fervour. Do you even recognise that as a danger, what Kelly is writing about?
I do, and it's in part a global phenomenon. It's not limited to the right of politics. Jeremy Corbyn in the UK and Bernie Sanders in the United States are just as much a powerful example of that happening on the left of politics internationally. And to come back to the point that Kate was mentioning earlier, I feel like Bill Shorten's been left out of this conversation for too long. This is a person who, as a minister in the previous government, was quite moderate on some issues like company tax cuts, which he was in favour of. He's now opposed to that on populist economic grounds. This is a person who, as Employment Minister, admitted the largest number of 457 visas holders ever in Australian history and is now railing against it. So if anyone is being dragged anywhere, it is Bill Shorten being dragged to the left by the Greens.
Let's get Jacqui Lambie's perspective on this. You're watching this as an outsider.
Yeah, I am. You know
who represents a middle ground? I mean, you identify yourself as representing the grassroots, I think it's fair to say.
A nationalist, they call me. Very patriotic. Love my country. No doubts about that.
Does that include people like me?
What I made it quite clear. It's a Sharia law. I don't want to.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Okay, so you know what bothers me, what I find really disheartening is that these people, whether they're on Labor, Liberal or the Greens, you have to follow your party. Whatever happened to putting your state and electorate first? Whatever happened to be able to cross you can say you can cross the floor, but that's crap. You never see them do that. Even big George Christensen, the oxygen thief, is out there, I'm going to cross the floor. I'm going to cross the floor. Well, come on, big boy, let's go. Let's do it. Bring on that Royal Commission in banking and let's see you cross the floor. But you know what? This is what's missing in politics. They have ropes around their neck and they do not put their states and electorate first, and that's why you're missing out. My main objective in Australian politics is to put Tasmania first and fight like hell for it. And that's exactly what you should be doing at all times, not playing noddies to your leaders.
Kate.
Well, to go to the question, I don't care what party Cory Bernardi's in. I don't care if he's a member of the Liberal Party. I don't care. What I do care about is that there are some very good reasons why the Australian public is so disillusioned with politics and with Parliament at the moment. And one of those reasons is that people feel that as politicians, we're focused on the internals within our own political parties more than we are on the lives of the Australian people. And what we've seen in the last week with Cory Bernardi coming and going, with people then calling him names, with members of the Liberal Party standing up and criticising him and calling him whatever it might be, we've just seen people focus on the internals of the Liberal Party instead of what is best for the Australian people, and it needs to stop. And it needs to stop that when we had a question about the Liberal Party and Conservatives, for example, James responds by, well, I'm going to jump on board Malcolm Turnbull's latest bandwagon and attack Bill Shorten's character. That had absolutely nothing to do with the question. The same way that Malcolm Turnbull's big speech the other day had absolutely nothing to do with the debate we were having about cuts to family benefits. It's all about politics. And
so, Kate, I'm going to bring it back to Luca because I'll come back to him on this. But it sounds like you're almost making the case for the need in a broken system to outsource big controversial decisions, to take it out of this hothouse of politics, which is what he's talking about. Do you think there's any way that could work?
No, look, I'm not advocating that, I'm sure Luca will, that we need radical reform. I actually believe in democracy. But what I believe is that members of parliament, in our democracy and in its structures and in our parliament...
Can I just make the point briefly, and I'm sure he'll make this himself, but governments have actually commissioned these guys to actually to help unravel complex decisions, as he mentioned at the beginning of the program. Do you think that might be necessary at a federal level?
Oh, more think tanks. Yippee.
I think that there is a much simpler first answer, and that has to be that we as members of Parliament, and particularly as members of major parties, need to hear the message that the Australian community has been telling us. And I mean, I think it's pretty simple that Australians got really upset with what we did when we were in government, with the replacing of leaders, with the internal divisions, with people focused on each other, and they kicked us out of government and they said, we don't want Labor back in. Then what happened was the Liberal Party did exactly the same thing. And now Australians have said, oh, the major parties are all about themselves. So we're going to look for smaller parties, we're going to look for minor parties. I think rather than trying to replace our system of parliament to come up with new mechanisms, we just need our members of parliament to get back to what we are elected to do, and that is to stand up for our community and to fight for the best interests of those that we represent. That's meant to be our bread and butter, and we've seen too many examples, and we're seeing it again with Corey Bernardi and the repercussions in the Liberal Party of people putting their own internal game playing first.
Okay, and Luca, just reflect first of all. I know you've got a solution and you have mentioned it several times, but just what is it that you think is that people really are disheartened about when it comes now to the system that they're looking at?
I think it's seen as being effectively unproductive. You know, why can't we do better than this? They see so much. It's a bit like, you know, look, clearly Australia is a standout economically. We've had 25 years of uninterrupted growth. Legislation is being passed by the Parliament. It's not completely broken. But we're hearing these rather concerning noises and rattles coming from under the bonnet, like tonight type stuff. So we're saying, why are we arguing? Why are we doing all this bickering? You know, so if you've got this old car and it's about to sort of break down, you start thinking, well, I might go and buy myself a new car. And you start looking around and you think, oh, well, get all these fantastic models out there. Oh, but maybe I might even think about not getting a new car and I'll look at getting an Uber and taxi or something like that. So all I'm thinking is, why don't we think about how we might do this better? And so why don't we apply that sort of thinking to how we might structure our government better?
I think a poor person probably just get it fixed because that's about all the money that they have. That's what I think. So we really... Well, someone actually
we're not talking... We've got money to fix...
Are they paying you to be a think tank?
We're not a think tank, we're a do tank. We're doing citizen jury.
And they're paying you? They're talking about budget bottom line and you...
We don't get any money from government, Jacqui.
Right.
We get no government from money from government.
OK, we're just about out of time. I'm just going to get... in fact, I might just get Yassmin to round up with a few thoughts because we haven't heard from you for a while.
Awesome. So I think there's definitely something in structural change, right? I think if we look around the world, people are protesting in a way they know how to, through their votes, right? We've seen multiple hung parliaments. We've seen situations where the result was not what the, you know, intellectual elite, as people are saying, thought that it would be. And I do think there is a requirement for structural change. What that looks like, mate, I'm 25. I don't have all the answers. But I definitely think that the system that we have now is not protecting the weakest and the most vulnerable. It's not protecting minorities. It's essentially benefiting those that are in power and that are protecting the status quo. And when you're in a situation where you're in power, if there's a table and it's the power table and there's 10 seats, and other people are saying, hey, we want to be equal. We want to bridge this gap a little bit. That means that a few people have to leave that table. And nobody's going to give those seats up easily.
No. But their political donors probably should leave those tables because they have a lot to do with the decisions that are made in Canberra. Trust me, from somebody that's on the inside, those political donations, they've got to stop.
We've got to stop as well because I'm sorry we're out of time. One more thing, go.
Every single person has a role to play in this. It's not just for the people that are affected to fight. Every single one of you has to be involved. Otherwise, things will happen and somebody will ask you in 30 years' time, what did you do when it all went down?
Thank you very much. That is a good place to leave it. That's all we have time for. Please thank our panel. Luca, Belgiorno-Nettis, James Paterson, Yassmin, Abdel-Magied, Jacqui, Lambie and Kate Ellis. Thank you very much. OK, that's great. Don't forget, you can continue the discussion on Q&A Extra. Tracy Holmes and her guest, Simon Longstaff, are taking talkback and discussing your social media comments and questions as soon as we finish. You'll find Q&A Extra on ABC News Radio and Facebook Live. Now, next Monday here on Q&A, the Attorney-General, George Brandis, the Deputy Opposition Leader, Tanya Plibersek, News Corp journalist and editor, Piers Ackerman, and British journalist Claire Wardell, the Research Director at First Draft, a new international media group targeting and exposing fake news. Until next week, good night.
They'll be busy.